Hey guys, this is Chodaros Designs, Chodaros Bling, and today we have a fabulous bracelet we're going to make. This is MsLoom's first original design, and it is called the Wrapped Bands bracelet. So, talk about naming it as we see it, huh? It is a simple design, two different techniques that are non-traditional as far as looming, but nothing difficult by any means. So this is the front and this is the back, and excuse me, I did not untwist my back bands, but the only difference between the front and the back is you have a single chain going down on both sides. That's it. So I am going to give you a couple of my tips because I have made 3 renditions and this is my second filming of this tutorial because of the bands I used and the way the bracelet came out. So I am not afraid to show you my screw-ups, but this is the first one I made tutorial-wise, and I am so not satisfied with the way it turned out that I decided to film another one with LE bands as the border. So this one I used all dual layer or just the thin Rainbow Loom band 600 pack bands, okay? The thickness I like, it's perfect, it's not too thin, but the only thing that I have an issue with, and I think I just kind of figured it out with filming this last tutorial, is I do not wish to use any type of dual layer or any type of band that you would need to untwist for your border, okay? Because if you are playing with your border, you're going to move these wrapped bands. When these wrapped bands come out of order, you have to make sure you get them exactly where they need to be, and hopefully that border will go back into place. See that one there? I have a hard time getting it back. Okay, and then it doesn't lay like I would like it to. So that's my beef with that one. This one was the first one I think I did, and this is made out of strictly thick silicone bands, and I think again my only issue is playing with the bracelet too much and getting those wrap bands out of sync, which makes the border stick out. Like that one I just cannot fix for some reason. It just wants to stick out there. Otherwise, the silicone bands do come out pretty nice because these do not have too much elasticity. And for color purposes, I did choose the Trend X Loom bands. So these are the colors that you're looking at from them. And my last rendition is just out of pearls and, is it the pearl bands from Rainbow Loom or whatnot? Actually, this came out pretty nice. I'm pretty impressed with the lack of twisting, and the border bands do not stick out of the ends. Okay, so yes, I'm not too happy and I'm kind of embarrassed to show you these renditions, but I just want you to be cautious of band placement, and if you can by any means, the border band that you placed, do not make it a elastic band if you had the opportunity, because the more elastic it has, the more options it will have to stick out, and if these are too elastic, they're not going to hold your border in. You can see on this LE border one, it came out perfect. Okay, so that's enough babbling. Let's grab our supplies and get started. Okay, so our loom will be set up in this type of configuration. It's 6 pins. The first 2 and last 2 are at the same level. Down 1 peg, and you have 2 center pins there. I'm only going to do 1 loom in length today because I want to use the purple from the gemstone pack from Rainbow Loom, and there isn't too many in that pack. So the first bands that we're going to place are going to be across this bottom, or this first row. And the way that MsLoom designed it and the way she placed her colors was this first row matches the first X that we place in the center. So typically we always, this is our border color, but in this case I'm going to mimic what she did. So first we want to place a band for close up there, and then a band going out, 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 and then out again. Okay, so now we start with our X bands. So whatever side you start with, I'm going to start with going from the right to the left and then from the left to the right, and I'm going to alternate colors with this gemstone purple and do this all the way until we reach towards the end of our loom. And I've done maybe 4 renditions, and I just I think it looks a lot better when the X bands in the center match the wrapped bands and the border bands the way MsLoom had done it. So that's the way I choose to do it today. And I've used every type of band, silicone, opaque, and the jewel layers, and just personally wasn't happy with any of the results. So that's why I'm doing LE today. So once we get up into the second to the last pins, we can go ahead and place our last X up here. And then we want to take that same color we used on the bottom, and we want to go down a peg and then out. And then on the other side, down a peg and then out. Okay? Alright, so once we have all of those placed, our next step is going to be placing these zigzag bands. It'll be a zigzag on both sides of this X. So I'm going to use the Rainbow Loom Sweets Gray and Sweets Black. Curious to see how that turns out. So I'm just going to do one X in one color and then another X in another color. So this can be a highlight, just a way to change it up. And these bands, when I was making this design with other types of bands, it seemed to not matter what type of band I used for this step. It was just the border in the wrap bands that I had difficulties with. So it's just, again, it's just my opinion over what I've done, is that I highly recommend possibly not using stretchy bands on the border. I might have just stretched it out when I was trying to untwist some of the bands, and that might have been why it didn't turn out the way I kind of wanted. So your last X will go to that pin right there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do the same on this side, and I want to make sure that my X colors match the same, so I start out with gray and then continue with black. Another thing is, I've noticed as I've gotten further on in looming that I'm forgetting about our basic know-how steps that we were taught in the beginning, which was be sure that your bands do not overlap on the peg. That's a lot of times if I'm trying to loop bands, I tend to grab the wrong band, and I believe that has a lot to do with my bands not being in the correct order. So Just something that we still have to make sure that we're keeping an eye on, especially when we have a lot of bands on one peg. Okay, so we want to push all these down like that. And then our next step will be to place a single chain going up the 2nd and 5th pin bar. Now this chain will not be visible hardly at all in the front of the bracelet. It's more or less you will see it in the back. So as far as color, like I'm just going to use my gray. If you did a bracelet in, say, like black and you used yellow for this, like a really big high contrast color, then maybe you could see a bit of it in the front, but otherwise it's not too visible. And this goes all the way up to our border. Push all those down. Alrighty, so our next step is to place our horizontal bands that are going to go across, and our goal is kind of keep it where you want to use the same color that you started out with, but you definitely don't have to. But these will be our wrap bands. So mine's going to be this lighter color band. And that's only because I started out my first X with the darker purple. If I would have started it out with this, it would have matched, but it'll be okay. Oops. I would super, super love if Rainbow Loom would break out the gemstone pack and make full packs of those colors. I love these colors. 100% definitely the red. We don't have an Ellie red. We need an Ellie red. Ellies are my favorite next to metallic because they're like the Lazy Loomers band. They don't twist. All right, so once we get all of those placed, then next and lastly, we just place our border bands, which are just bands going straight up on the first and last pin bars. And again, because I'm matching my X's with the outer bands, I'm using the opposite of the light purple, which is the dark that we placed in the center. And you make sure you push those bands down. And that goes to the second to last peg. And after we're done placing these, we are going to turn our loom around, and we just have to place, for this point, 2 cap bands. So I'm going to use the same color I used on the outside, and cap band on the first peg, and then a cap band on the last peg. Okay, so we're ready to start looping. We're first going to loop out the border that we just placed. So simple stitch going under the cap band, grabbing the first band, and then looming it straight forward back to itself. So it is the first or the top band in this peg, because the bottom band is that horizontal band that we placed. Maybe I'll get enough courage to show you the renditions that I did at the end here. I'm just too embarrassed to post them or to show you. I'm embarrassed of, I don't know if I just looped it wrong, or certain bands are just not made for certain designs. Okay, so we take our last one up like that, and make sure that all of these bands are pushed down. Like that. And so our next step is we want to take this, we want to take the band that's going horizontally on our first and second peg, go through the cap band on the first peg and pull it back to itself like that, and do the same on this side like that. Okay, so now we get to loom our wrapped bands. So instead of going inside of the peg like we normally do, we're going to grab that bottom band from the outside, take it up, over, and back to itself like that. So we're grabbing it from the outside, bringing it up, over, like that. Okay, so it's not too bad of a stretch, but I tell you, I used metallic bands doing the border and these wrap bands, and because they are so stretchy, they went out of place after the bracelet was completed. So that could have been completely my fault, I'm not sure, but LE bands don't have much elasticity to them compared to metallics and that, so I think I'll be in the clear. So as you can see on this design, we are looming it from the outside in, which means you should not have any more bands on the first and last pin bar. Alrighty, so after we do that step, we are going to go ahead and loom in our zigzag bands, or single chains, I'm sorry, the single chains on the second and fifth pin bar. So non-traditional, we're going to go through there's just one band on top, so we grab it. Typically we go straight, in this case we're going to the right. So we're going to place all of the single chain bands on the second pin bar to the third pin bar. So when we do this, this puts it right on top of a zigzag band, and therefore you will only be able to really see this from the back and not the front, because we already placed the band that's going from the right from this peg over. Okay, same thing on this side, down in this peg, center. Now I can see better. So when we're finished, the middle 2 pin bars should have a band placed on it from this step. So again, I'm going to just make mention that this is looming from the outside of the loom to the inside. Okay, so we want to push down all of those bands, and we have 2 more steps left until we are complete. So the next thing we want to do is we want to loom out these X bands, or I'm sorry, these zigzag bands. So what we need to do is we need to go into the second peg and grab that bottom band and bring it in to the center left. And this, the same on this side. This comes in like that. Okay? So after we do that, we're going to loom out our zigzags, and it is I did my single chain the same color as my zigzags, so you can see it, but it's a little bit hidden down in there. So we want to go from this peg to the center, and it is just a traditional zigzag looming. Wherever you leave off, you start the next. That's not the right band. So this should be the bottom band. It should be the bottom band on the second pin bar. Yikes. And if you can loom faster than I can, I'm sure you can see by now the last step is to loom out the X bands in the center. So if you want to go ahead and move along quicker, you can certainly do so. But I will highly suggest not to pull this off, to make sure that you take it off peg by peg, because even though we take our bands off typically from the outside, when we're taking it off the loom with our loom hook, all of our tension is on these center 2 pegs. So it'd be kind of hard still to even pull it off. And whatever you do, and this is just my personal suggestion, is try your hardest not to pull on your border bands or your wrap bands, because if you need to do any band fixing because they are crooked or whatnot, like if you're using like a dual layer, just play with it as much as you have to and not overdo it. I think might be another reason I stretched out those bands. So, bling. I have not done a bling rendition yet, but there are a ton of possibilities for bling. Usually, my brain just sees it. I don't have to really put too much thought into it. The first thing that I saw was replacing the border bands with a chain and then just wrapping the wrap bands through the chain. That was just my first, what I saw first in my mind. Or it could be a rhinestone cup link. Okay, our last step is just to loom out the zigzags. Always want to make sure that you're looming the band on top. In my case, it's this one going from the left to the right. Sure, you don't have to do this, but you will be able to see it if you don't. And I got to loom it all with you. I like that. It's not very often I get to do this, so I'm happy. So the two little power loomers that I call little ones, Expert Looms and Loomaniac, they can place bands and loom them in less than 30 minutes. It's unbelievable to me. So they they inspire me to try to do the same, because my tutorials are like 6 hours long. They are good girls, good little loomers. I think there's nothing I love most than somebody that is younger than me that can teach me something. I think that's really awesome. They've taught me a lot. Alrighty then, we are done. Only thing left is that we just loom out these last row bands. So we'll go from this peg in, and then one last band going in to this side, in, and one last band in. So this is what your loom should look like when it is complete. Always looking at the side. If you see any bands hanging out down there, it's not going to hold together. So remember, we placed this band, I'll turn it, we placed this band down here. We're going to go into this left center, grab that band, give it just a little pull, and then go into the right center and grab the same band, and there is our close up. So I did forget a C-clip, so I just have a regular band I'm going to pull through for the time being and just make a slip knot like that. And I highly suggest taking this whole thing off with your hook. As I mentioned, all of the tension of your bracelet is on the two center pegs, or mostly again on these two pegs on the inner part as well. Another thing, be very careful that you are grabbing every single band in that peg. There are times that I do not have them all, and one of them gets stuck on the peg, and then it stretches the band, and I have a hard time putting it back in the design. So just some little boo-boos I've made down the road that hopefully you guys don't make. Take these off. So it figures, this is like my 4th rendition, and of course I love it, and I can only do it in a 1 pin bar or 1 loom in length. I have a pretty good idea that I'm going to think it's awesome. See? That's what I was talking about. See how that one band is just kind of sitting there? it's already stretched. So and it super sucks if you're using a metallic band or a very elastic, you know, stretchy band. All right, we are done. Gosh darn it. Take it off these last two pegs. And yay. How exciting. Oh, doesn't it figure that I just so love it and I could only do it in one loom length. Alrighty, so you can see by looking at this side here, I can already tell that this is the back. Okay, so let's start with the front. The front is face down of the loom. So as we were looping the bands, the front was facing down. And the reason that you can tell is because, as I mentioned before, you can't see any of those two single chains that we placed going on the 2nd and 5th pin bar. Okay, so I can tell you right now, I am 100% satisfied with this bracelet because of the fact that I used LE bands on the outside. It was a wreck when I used them on the border. Some of them were stretched out and whatnot. So you just want to give it a little bit of a pull. Okay. Now, here's the back. And these bands right here, which I used the Sweets Gray, these were the single chain bands. So as I mentioned, you can see them on the back here, but they are not visible on the front. I do have a little bit of band fixing to do because I did use the Sweets, but I hope that you are satisfied with your rendition. And the more I play with this, the more I can tell that in the past what I've done wrong. It really matters where these wrap bands are placed. So if they become a little bit crooked, put them straight where they're supposed to be, and that way your border band doesn't bulge out. That was my problem. All right, so this is MsLoom's first original design made way back when, so we do love it, and we thank you again for allowing us to recreate your bracelets. So make sure you give MsLoom a follow and a shout out on Instagram and Facebook, and hashtag us for Wrapped Bands Bracelet. We'd love to see your renditions. So I'm gonna give you a bling challenge. This is what I'd like to see because I don't get to do as much bling sometimes. All right, as I mentioned, the one thing that I would do if I was to add some bling is I would take out this border band, and instead I would place some type of chain and wrap. So you'd have to take your chain and you'd have to incorporate it into the beginning here so it's not sticking out, and then I would wrap those bands around a chain. And also I think a large stone rhinestone chain link cup would look phenomenal on the borders. So I would love to see someone do that. Also, adding bling in the center, in this area, that would be the second thing I would do. I wouldn't do the two together, but I would add bling there. I would not add bling here because simply those bands are on the top and that bling will stick up. So you have a better chance of adding bling on these zigzag bands as it will kind of nestle in. So I hope you guys are satisfied with your rendition, and stay tuned because I have a ton more coming and some brand new loomers that are going to be featured on my channel. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye.